Hey everyone, so welcome to the Identity Love Podcast. This is the very first episode. I am so excited. I am Tracy Konane. I am a life coach and identity specialist for folks who have lost themselves in life, in their relationships, and never really quite knew who they are. I help you to find yourself, to be yourself, and not only to just understand how to be yourself, but feel cool and good and just happy inside to be who you really are. And so much of us are afraid to be ourselves. We are just so afraid because we are used to identifying as somebody who is sweet and good and kind and giving and all the things for somebody else, for other people. And so it feels very uncomfortable and scary. And we think that when we have to be ourselves, it means we relax and just submit to being this mediocre, unspecial, boring person that we've known ourselves to be when we're not pleasing others. And that's simply not true. That's not true. That's not what happens. When we are truly being ourselves, we feel cool and good being ourselves. And when we feel cool and good being ourselves, we are naturally loving to other people while still being loving to ourselves. So what I hope you do is to understand that there is this cool version of yourself in you that you become once you are actually being true to yourself, and that you become a different version of yourself that you will like being once you understand what it really is to just be yourself. If you are listening to this, I just wanted to let you know that there is a video of this on YouTube. And if you are watching this, I want you to know that there is an audio version of this podcast on Spotify. So this Identity Love podcast is for those of us who didn't have somebody there saying, hey, let's find out who it is that you really are here. Let's look at everything that you actually want, what you actually like, who you really are. Let's look at all these different things and figure out who you are. Not what everyone else wants you to be, not what I think you should be, not what anyone else but you thinks you should be. And we didn't have that while growing up, right? And even if we did, it wasn't something that was there enough to actually bring us into ourselves. For me, I had a great aunt who didn't live near me. I saw her rarely, but when I did, I felt like she was cool, like she knew who I was, and she was very patient and nurturing as far as letting me become who I really am. But I wasn't around her enough for her to actually influence me and grow me into myself. And instead, like many of you all, I got sucked into the whole thing where we're just surrounded by all these people telling us who we should be, and we want to be really good people, so we get caught up in trying to be all these different things while still trying to be ourselves. But then over time, being ourselves gets dulled. It gets taught out of ourselves. We get scolded for it. We have experiences where bad stuff happens when we're trying to just be ourselves. I just really want to bring this as a good influence because I know that all of you need someone who is there to be a voice that is different from everything that you had and that you have right now, because we are surrounded by all these other people who have not yet seen us as ourselves or do not nurture us as ourselves or only know us as who we've been all these years when we're partner pleasing, people pleasing, trying to be something for everyone else. Because we're surrounded by people like that, it can be very difficult for us to stay in this mode of actually being in this different mindset where we go forth and do things differently and think about ourselves differently and treat ourselves differently. And so I know how important it is to have someone in your ear, in your life, telling you and reminding you and talking to you as you go throughout your life and your day, just to keep you on track and not get sucked back into the old ways of being, because it's so easy. We are social creatures, and we are meant to just listen to everyone outside of ourselves and be part of the group. And so if you are not in the vicinity of people who are different and are looking out for you and fostering your identity and encouraging you into this new version of yourself, it can be very, very difficult. And so I grew up in a town in the middle of Oahu, Hawaii, and it wasn't like a tiny little town, but it was just a very chill town where the edgiest, craziest version of its inhabitants were just at the local Starbucks wearing 9 Inch Nails t-shirts. And that was the craziest, wildest thing that was available in where I lived. And it's a very casual place, and it's a very family-oriented place. And people don't really talk about deeper things like, oh, you are meant to just be what you want to be, and you don't have to follow what everyone else is doing. It is kind of a small town mentality where everybody knows each other and everyone's just checking in, and all they care about is, are you going to college? How's your family? Are you being a good daughter? Are you being a good son? Whatever, right? They are just caring about, are you fitting in and being good for your parents and at school and your friends? They just care if you're kind of following along. And this is what so many of our environments growing up do, right? Even if you were raised in a big city, if the people around you are not there telling you to go and put yourself first and pay attention to your identity, it is really hard to even see that that's an option. So that's my background, and I knew from the very beginning that there was something missing, that I wanted something to be different, and I didn't know how to do that. I didn't know how to be brave enough to do that or what that would even look like. And so from the very beginning, I was seeking something. I thought it was confidence. I thought it was self-esteem. I thought it was all these things that I was lacking. I was like, oh, I just need to learn how to be more social. I just need to learn how to branch out and be a little bit more bold. But this is a thing that I realized, and that so many of the people I work with, what we really are seeking underneath all of this is permission. So permission, right? It is this idea of being allowed to not only pay attention to ourselves and put ourselves first, but to be ourselves, to be weird and so-called weird, compared to what everyone else might be doing and thinking, and to just pay attention to the little things that make us who we are, all the things that are effortless to us, the things that we just naturally like, right? Nobody told us that we should like the certain things that we liked while growing up. Nobody told us the stuff they were interested in, the stuff that we do when no one else is around, that we're looking up online and we are into and we're excited by. Nobody told us, hey, these are the right things that you should be interested in. It feels so natural when we're just going forth and looking at all these things that are just interesting to us naturally. And so, for example, I was into all kinds of weird stuff while growing up. I was into King Tut. I was into the Phantom of the Opera. I was into books from the library and just looking at art. And nobody said, hey, you should be into these things. And even though nobody around me was into these things, I still liked it. I still sought it out. I went to the library and looked up everything about it. And it feels fun and it feels easy, right? When you're looking at all these little things that you yourself like, that nobody told you that you should like. But then what happens is that nobody understands it or nobody supports you in it, right? So if I was looking at all these art books, people would be like, well, why? Right? Like, if you're not going to become a great artist, what's the point of just trying to draw these things? Like, it's cool to have this hobby, but it's not that important. School is more important. Subtle things like that. And we all have different experiences. It could be something completely different from what I went through, but there was some point in time in your upbringing where someone made something that was meaningful to you, something that was important to you, something that you naturally liked. Someone made that either not important, or they shut it down, or they made fun of it, or they told you to stop it, or they didn't understand it, and they told you it was wrong, basically. And so this stuff, like, I remember these things from second grade, where there was one time where we're in between activities and we're just switching up stuff and walking around the classroom, going to a different area and about to do something new. And I remember there was this thin sheet of paper that I was blowing up into the air and watching it kind of fall back in my hands and blowing it up into the air. I was just kind of in my own little world. Just kind of doing my own little thing while we're in the middle of switching up activities. And for some reason, and I was like one of the good kids. I wasn't the ones out there talking back to the teacher or making trouble, right? I was one of the good ones. I was very quiet. But for some reason, the teacher saw me doing this thing where I'm blowing the paper up in the air. And she took me outside. And the door was still open, so everyone in the classroom was staring at me. And she's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And I said, "Blowing a piece of paper in the air." And then she's like, "Why? Why are you doing that?" And in my mind, I remember that the reason why I was kind of doing that, if there was any reason for just being in your own world and watching this scientific thing happen, was that on Sesame Street, there was a part where I guess they were demonstrating weights. And so they were blowing a feather up in the air and saying light. And then there's something else where they're like heavy. And so I don't know, in my brain I was like, oh, light, paper's light. I was just having fun. I was innocently in my own world. And I got in such trouble for that. She scolded me for that. And she said, she's like, why are you I think she probably said, why are you in your own little world here? Why don't you focus? What's wrong with you? That kind of thing. And I just remember that this was just a very, very kind of off-putting experience to me, that I remember it to this day, where I remember thinking, I wasn't even doing anything wrong. There's so many other kids who are talking back, right? We know the kind. And I was not like that at all, but yet I got in trouble just because I was innocently doing something fun for my own enjoyment in my own little world while we were switching activities. And from that point on, I kind of felt like I started to get more self-conscious, where every single thing that I was doing in the eyes of someone else could be wrong, may or may not get me in trouble. They might like me less. There might be something wrong that I don't realize I'm doing. And it is stuff like this, and I'm sure you can come up with little instances, big and small, in your own lives, in your past, even if it was recent, right? Or sometimes we're still around people who shut us down like this and scold us for just doing things that are so innocent. And so in our minds, we often just kind of write this off like, oh yeah, that was just a little thing that happened in childhood. But we have to realize that if it sticks with us today, where we remember that incident and how we felt, that is important to realize why we started to feel this way, where we're constantly doubting ourselves, where we are being self-conscious, where we are constantly analyzing ourselves from the outside and making sure that we're good enough and we're doing the right thing and that we're presenting ourselves in the right way for everyone else. So all of these things are kind of like a gunk. I like to imagine all of us as this, like a globe, like a white orb that is like a lamp. So it's this white orb with a light that shines through, right? And then every single time that something happens, like what I just described, where someone says, stop doing that, what are you doing? Or just shuts down something that you like, oh, that's not important. We don't need that. Like, being creative is not important in life. You have to get better at math. Something like that, whatever it is for you. Every time that happened, I imagine that that's like a muddy hand that just comes and puts these muddy handprints all over this ball, this glowing orb, until it is full up and it has no light shining through. And it's kind of like this caked over muddy ball that you can't see the light from it. And this is how I felt. And you probably feel this way too, where you have all of the stuff inside of you that is just covered up to the point where you can't even see the light shining through. You don't even know what's in there, what that looks like. And every time that we try to wipe away some of the gunk and a little ray of light shines through, it makes us scared. It makes us nervous. Does anybody else see this light? Is someone going to scold me or not like me or not understand me if this little ray of light is shining through? And so we cover it up. We're like, no. I was told sometime in the past, I had some experience where this is bad, and I am scared to let the light shine through. And so what we do here, what identity love is about, is we are wiping off all the layers of all the grime and all the mud that is covering up this orb that is you, that is your innate self, your soul, and letting little bits of light shine through little by little until we clean it off and you become this whole shining orb again. So that's the first thing I wanted to let you all know, is that deep down, we all know who we really are. Even if we can't access that right now, even if we are unsure of how to even wrap our minds around that or how to fathom who we really are, because we've been so many different versions of ourselves for everybody else, there is this orb within you. And I want you to know that that orb, once you are starting to be more of that in a loving, supportive way, in a way that is self-loving and supported by yourself, you are going to feel good. You are going to feel more confident, an inner quiet confidence. You are going to feel cooler in your own way. Like, you're going to think you are cool. Not cool to like what the trendy people think or what, I don't know, what the masses think is cool. But you're going to think, you're like, you know what? This is a pretty cool version of me. I like being this. And this is naturally going to happen once you start to wipe away all this gunk. And so just like how I thought I needed this self-confidence first, I needed to do all this stuff, fix myself first in order for me to then be more of myself and like myself. The first piece is permission. We have to first give ourselves permission to uncover these things and see these little things about us that are often so close to who we are and so just like intimate and easy for us, right? It's the stuff that we just naturally like without trying. We're just naturally drawn to these things and we don't think it's significant, but it is. And so when we are uncovering, we're doing the opposite of everything we've been doing to cover ourselves up. We've been trying to be very stiff and rigid and play by the rules of everybody else. All right, so I'm constantly scanning, what are the rules here? Am I allowed to blow paper in the air? Nope. Okay, what else do I need to do? I need to just sit quiet. Okay, they're smiling. I guess I can smile now. We have all these rules built up. We become very serious and rigid within ourselves. Even if we are smiling and having a good time on the outside, inside we're always so buttoned up and stiff and constantly double checking with everybody else around us. It's because we haven't given ourselves permission. So the opposite, when we're cleaning it all off, is to do the opposite of all that seriousness and relax and have fun and let things be cool. And I'm going to explain more about this coolness factor in the next podcast. But for now, I just want you to think about the idea of permission. Because if we feel like we don't have permission to start uncovering ourselves and to start thinking of ourselves in new ways, if we don't think we have permission to do that, we are not going to be able to do it in a way that feels good and natural and self-loving to ourselves. Because that's what I tried to do, is I tried to uncover some stuff, but immediately I had all these judgments where I'm like, no, I can't do that. That's not important. That can't possibly be cool or who I want to be. And so I covered it up because I didn't have permission. And so when I started off and I realized I needed this and I realized I just kept looking around for permission and there's no one else to give it to me, I'm the one who had to give it to myself first. And I know that's not fun to think about. And I know it sounds so heavy, like, oh my God, I just have to really just use willpower and to keep telling myself it's okay. But I want to give you some ideas of how you can do this. So this is something I tell all my clients and everyone that I start working with. And if you join Identity Love Club, which is my little digital resource where you can have access to an ever slowly growing library of identity love videos, I talk about this in depth, where you think about your role models. Who are you inspired by? So back when I was starting this and I was trying to give myself permission, I looked at people who were so much themselves in a fun, cool way that I thought was cool. So I looked at people like Bjork, the singer, with all her crazy fashion. She doesn't care what anyone thinks. Like, she is out there, but she is just being this unique, interesting person. And I was really drawn to that. I was thinking, wow, if I was around a whole bunch of people like this, I would be so different. I would dress differently. I would feel so much more free. It would be so much more fun. So I began really just looking at people like that and showing myself that there are people out there in the world right now that are doing things that feel like if I was around them, I would feel so much more free and comfortable in being different parts of myself that are just natural to me. And so the first thing is to look for people who are doing things that you think are cool. So even though for Bjork, for example, she was just so out there, like she's way more out there than I would ever be as far as dressing and all the stuff. But she really represented the possibility of, wow, you could really just wear whatever you want and just follow your own whims and be as quirky and weird as you want to be and survive and have partners and be loved and have niche groups of friends who love you and understand you. Because I was like, if she, this weird, interesting person who is a misfit and doesn't fit in anywhere, if she has so many people who are loving her and following her, if she is able to have that, am I not allowed to do that in my own way, in my own life, without even being anywhere as wild as she is? Why don't I see that it's possible, right? Because I had to show myself these examples in my life instead of just looking around and seeing all these people who I felt like I couldn't be myself around. Or I was confused because they weren't showing me a version of who I'd want to be. So the first thing is to look for examples of people who are out there, whether someone in your real life, you could admire from afar, or even better if they are directly in your life. So I did have that great aunt that I told you about. She was so much older than me that it was hard to relate to her on a level when I was trying to become myself. But there was things about her where just thinking about her was kind of like giving me permission to be like, okay, this person in my family went her own path. She lives off in this little shack, a cute shack on the Big Island. And she doesn't have kids and she just has all these plants. And she keeps learning. She goes to the university and keeps learning. And there was all these different things that I was like, okay, so she is an example of what I would be more drawn to. And so just having her in my mind, like printing out a picture of her, remembering her, reminding myself of her, was showing me and giving me permission for myself. It's building examples in my life that give me permission to say, like, look, there's people out there who, if I was around them, they'd totally let me do what I wanted. They'd totally support me in what I wanted. They'd understand me. They wouldn't judge me. So when we don't have this directly around ourselves, we can look online, we can look at shows, characters in shows who show up in different ways. We have to show ourselves a different way of being than what we currently see around us. Okay? Because right now we're kind of like scared little animals hiding under the sofa because we've been scolded and beaten down too much throughout our lives. That when someone's like, oh, come out, let's see who you are, we don't feel safe. So surrounding ourselves with examples of people and characters and stuff, it could even be cartoon characters, I don't care. Anything goes here, as long as it inspires you and you think, wow, that's a really good example of someone, if I was around them, that I would feel safer to be more of whatever it is that I feel like I am when I'm just naturally me. So how you can surround yourself with this is either make Pinterest boards that you look at regularly, or just remind yourself of them, make a list of them that you look at whenever you're feeling very vulnerable and unsure of yourself. Print out the pictures and put them in a book which I'm going to talk about later. You can make yourself a book that is an inspiration of the coolest people that inspire your coolest version of yourself, which is your true self, by the way. The coolest version of you that you can imagine for yourself is the real version of you. So just find anything that makes you feel good. Think of the people you just liked while growing up. It can be anybody, even if through and through they're not exactly everything that you want to be, but there's a certain part of them that you feel drawn to. Think of that one part of them and hold on to that part of them in your mind and make a list of all these different qualities that they are, and create like this pantheon of muses. I call them muses because they inspire me to be myself, and remind yourself of these people. Like, so we have to surround ourselves. We have to immerse ourselves in these people that exist either in reality or fiction, but they exist, and that they are safe to be themselves, and they are being themselves, and they still have partners. They still have a great life. They like who they are. We think they're cool. And we surround ourselves with this. So what I want to tell you is that while we do this, we also have to practice imagining their mentality, right? All of our muses. How would they think if we were going to go and do something that we are afraid to do, or that we are judging ourselves for because someone else judged us? Because sometimes when we think about our own wants and needs and our own dreams and our own desires, we immediately think, oh my God, that's so selfish to think of that, or irresponsible, or it's kind of stupid, or, that's not who you really are. You can't do that. And we shut ourselves down. But if we were around the people we think are the coolest, they will probably say, oh my God, no, that is neat. That is cool that you want to go and write that story. That is cool that you want to dress that way. That is cool that that's your dream. Yes, you deserve to have that. And so we have to start thinking kind of more like the people we think are cool are thinking, and think about that to ourselves. Notice that the people that we think are cool are different. They have their own little things going on. They have their own lives going on. They have little interesting quirks and nuances about themselves and their personalities that we think are really neat, that we wish we could see more of in the world. And so whatever it is that we like about those people, those cool people, we have to bring those same things out in ourselves, because that is a sign that our soul is drawn to something, which means it's our true selves, right? So our true selves are drawn to these particular qualities of these people. And when we start thinking in that way, we naturally start giving ourselves permission to be more of that, because we have these influences in our lives and visual examples and proof that it is possible to exist in such a way and be more of this. Your own flavor, your own formula that is distinctly you, which is your values, your wants, your needs, your personality, your interests, the things you want, the way you think about things. Even if it feels bad or like it's a bad habit or something you shouldn't be doing, these are all clues and cues to yourself. Okay? So what I'm trying to show you here is I'm giving you permission to value all these parts of yourself that just are, that come naturally, that you feel a certain way. Even if you feel annoyed, that in itself is a cue and clue to who you really are, to a cool version of yourself, to a certain expression of yourself that maybe you are not allowing yourself to be because you think you have to be this really gentle and loving and quiet and giving person, and you're afraid to have these emotions that you think are bad. But it'd be really interesting to see if the people that you admire, right, your muses, are they a little edgy? Are they kind of like, do they express sort of darker feelings in a very self-loving way? I bet that they kind of express their feelings more. And so this is why it's so interesting to pay attention to what you are naturally drawn to and what you think is cool, and to give yourself permission to start to think of all these things that are naturally you as possibly being cool when they're all combined together. Okay, so it's the combination that makes it cool. It's the combination. So if you will find this intriguing, if you're like, wait, there's a whole cool version of myself inside myself. I thought I was just like this identityless nobody who wasn't special. I'd love to see how I'm special. I'd love to see how I can be the coolest version of myself. If you're feeling that way, come to identitylove.com/year and sign up. We're going to work together and I'm going to show you exactly who you are. We're going to do fun stuff like this. It is going to feel fun and flowing and different, but it's going to feel so good. And you could be a completely different version of yourself in 1 year. Imagine what that would be like if you could be this cooler version of yourself that you love being at this time next year. Imagine that. And again, I am here to be a good influence in your life and to remind you of all the things. I'm going to be kind of like your new cool identity aunt, where I remind you to be true to yourself and to care about the things that you feel and think and want. And that when you do it in this way, when you do it in a self-love allowing way, when you unblock yourself from uncovering all these different things that are blocking your ball of light, when you do it in such a way, it is going to feel fun and good and freeing and almost devious in a way, because you are finally breaking all those stupid rules that you actually don't believe in, right? So much of our lives don't make sense. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I waiting around? Why am I going out of my way? Why am I doing all these things when it actually doesn't match my own wants and values for myself and it doesn't help my own life? We're doing so many things that don't make sense to us. And this is why we're frustrated. This is why we have such tension and conflict within ourselves. Because we're like, ugh, none of this makes sense. I give myself permission to go and please all these other people and my partner, but I'm not giving myself permission to do all these things that I say I want to change and do. It is crazy making. So the permission part, I'm giving you permission from my little corner of my world to yours. And I want to encourage you to keep your eye out and look around the world, online, on shows, whatever, for examples of people that you think are super cool in some shape or form. And to see that that is your soul yearning to be a little bit more of that in that way. There is some important information there. And to see everything that you are drawn to or even repelled by, whenever you feel this interest or, right? Visceral kind of reaction of like, I don't like that. Pay attention to these things instead of just being like, that doesn't matter. How can I go and be better for my partner? Instead of just doing that, pay close attention to these things. I give you full permission to look at every area in your life that feels like you, right? All these emotions that come up. You're not trying to make these emotions come up. You just feel a certain way. These are important things. Important cues and clues to who you are. And it is important for you to see it as important. I give you permission to start seeing yourself as something that is possibly extra special and cool and important. And that these are all going to come together in a way that's going to make sense to you. But you first have to allow yourself to even fathom that all these things that you are naturally is cool in your own way, right? Not cool to everybody else, but cool to how you feel in your soul. Okay, I think that's it. So the next one is going to be about the coolness piece. But until then, you can come check out more stuff on my website, identitylove.com. And follow me on Instagram at Tracy Konane. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.